Welcome to the October 9th edition of the Revolutionary Sports Show. I'm Corey Sullivan.
And I'm Brian Duchaine.
And we're going to be going through the Week 5 games here in the NFL. Kicked off on Thursday, the NFC West, a matchup of two Titans, the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals kicked off. Brian, did you watch this game? What did you think of it?
Yeah, I watched it, and it was not very fun to watch, especially because we're Seahawks fans, and we're like, one of these teams, one of these 1-3 teams, I believe, are going to get a loss, which that part of it's good, but we kind of both knew what was going to happen before we even saw the game. And got Gabbert out there running for his life and not really looking like an NFL caliber quarterback, looking like the same guy that was on Jacksonville a couple years back, but man, that was not a good game to watch. Larry Fitzgerald out there doing his thing. David Johnson looking like there's no defense even on the other side for him. So, I mean, it really just looks like a practice for the Arizona Cardinals, really. And San Francisco, they need major help. Chip Kelly, I don't think, was the answer to begin the season, and we kind of knew that was going to happen too. He's going to come into San Francisco, try to use his style offense. And it's not Oregon. It's not the NCAA. It's not college football. It's not junior college. You can't just run an offense like that. And I think it's pretty obvious now it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think you're right. Especially with Blaine Gabbert. That's the one thing that confuses me the most about this Chip Kelly offense is when he was at Oregon, he always had that fast quarterback. Darren Thomas, I believe Jeremiah Masoli was one of his quarterbacks. And now with Blaine Gabbert, he had 70 yards and a touchdown, but he doesn't have that next level speed that Kaepernick has. And, Blaine Gabbert has never been a winner at this level. I believe he's 9-31 as a starter in the NFL. And, that comes out to 40 games, and you only won 9 games out of 40 in your whole NFL career. I'm pretty sure that's a good indicator on whether or not you can be a franchise quarterback if teams could look towards you to win. And obviously he doesn't. 1-4 to start the season. They're headed towards the bottom, kind of like the Cleveland Browns. And I don't know if Colin Kaepernick is an answer. I mean, he's another guy that's had his chance to shine. Not that he's a bad quarterback, but, his inability to complete tons of passes, he can get it done on the ground, but he doesn't complete a lot of passes in the fall. But at least, he got them into the playoffs and has a winning record as the starter. And it doesn't make sense how you could try to justify starting Blaine Gabbert over Kaepernick unless, something else is going on, which obviously there is. But that's neither here nor there. The Arizona Cardinals handled them accordingly, 33-21, a nice convincing win. The Cardinals looked great. Drew Stanton he was all right. I will say he's looked better than Carson Palmer has, though. Palmer hasn't looked good all year. Him and John Brown. John Brown is a ghost this season. I don't know where he's going.
I don't know who John Brown is.
But David Johnson, he's been great. 2 touchdowns, 140 plus. He was balling, and this isn't the first time all season he's been balling. He's been putting over 100 yards all-purpose every single game, and he's been their bell cow, if you will, throughout the season. And good things. I think Bruce Arians' team's always a good team. I was surprised that they were 1-3. And, I'm glad that the Cardinals are coming back up. They were the division rivals recently for the Seattle Seahawks. Right now it's the Los Angeles Rams, who just have the Seahawks number for some reason. But, some of these morning games going on today, starting off with the Patriots' return of Tom Brady facing the Cleveland Browns. What do you think of this matchup? Do you think that Brady's going to come out and then be ready to go, or is it going to take him some time to get it going?
Yeah, for this matchup, for my notes, I just had an eye roll emoji. I'm not really a big fan of Tom Brady. I'm not a big fan of the Browns either. They look like absolute trash this season. And, I feel like you could throw a third-string quarterback out there and beat the Browns this year. So Tom Brady coming back isn't really going to be that big of a deal for New England versus the Browns. It was a big deal last week when the Patriots lose to Buffalo. I don't know when the last time we saw that was, when Buffalo beat New England. And everyone always thinks that Buffalo is going to be this surprise team every year. Maybe we got it this year if Buffalo can keep it up after beating New England, use that as some kind of a motivator to get them next time this season. And, I believe it was 16-0 when they played, and New England just didn't look good. I believe they started Brissett in that game, and Brissett, you can't really expect a whole lot out of the guy. He had a good game, that one game that he came in and had to absolutely do his thing, but a third-string quarterback, it's like Seahawks throwing in B.J. Daniels and expecting him to be good. So now that Brady's back, I think it's better for New England, but for this specific matchup, I honestly don't think this is really that big of a deal that Brady's back, because it is the Browns. And eventually they're just going to get worn down, and they don't have all the pieces to their puzzle. They can just compete every week. So I think that's not even really a matchup to watch. I would rather change the channel and watch a different game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Browns have settled for their fate. I think they might be one of those 0-16 teams. They're fighting for one of the Deshaun's, either Deshaun Kaiser or Deshaun Watson as their future signal caller, unfortunately, for one of the Deshaun's. Don't have any weapons really there on offense, and it's they're going to go through some growing pains, kind of what the Titans are going through. But Brady being back, I'm on the fence with it. I think he could either start off great, or it could be a little slow start for him. Way through the season, some are in mid-season form, some are still kind of figuring things out. So it could be a little while for Brady to get his game legs under him. But I could also see him coming out and just being ready to kill. He's a vet, he's a champion, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Cheater or not, however you look at him, he still puts up numbers. Still a good player in general, and I think he could be ready to show the NFL and show Goodell up in his return back to the league. But yeah, I think the Patriots are going to win this easily. I don't think the Browns stand a chance, and I don't think that they care to stand a chance. I think that they're ready to pack it in for that number one pick and try to move forward and try to not be Cleveland anymore. But another game that's going on this morning is the Washington Redskins are facing the Baltimore Ravens, the two of the league's greatest trash talkers, and Josh Norman and Steve Smith facing off against each other in Baltimore. What do you got for this game?
Well, I don't know if you can say Steve Smith without the senior, right? Because it's Steve Smith Sr. on the back of his jersey. So, Steve Smith versus Josh Norman. Josh Norman, it really depends on which Josh Norman is going to show up. There's the Josh Norman that's trash talking Odell and locking him down with Carolina, and then there's the Josh Norman that's getting burned in training camp. So, I think Josh Norman has looked pretty good. His other corners and safeties haven't really helped him out a whole lot, but that's one thing. They don't really have that balanced defense that Carolina did, and Josh Norman is going to have really his hands full with just about any top receiver he faces, with whether it's Odell, whether it's Steve Smith, whether, even Doug Baldwin, I feel like could give Josh Norman a run for his money if they start running crossing routes that they can't keep up with. He needs help over the top. That's where he's going to run into trouble. But when you look at the Ravens, Justin Forsett, too soon? No, he's gone. Justin Forsett's not coming back. But when you look at it, Terrence West, is Terrence West really for real is the question. I think there's a big question mark there in their run game for the Ravens. And I'm just really not sold on the Redskins either. I know they have some talent out there with Josh Norman, with Deshaun Jackson, and those kind of guys. But when you look at their overall team, I just don't think they're that good. And I think when you throw them up against top caliber teams, they're not going to compete very easily. And I think it's just that whole division, even the Cowboys, I'm not really sold on either, even though they're 3-1. The Eagles might be okay. They're looking pretty good to start, but that whole division I just feel like isn't really the same caliber as other divisions in the league. I mean, sure, you have the Lions and the Bears, but in the North, they're not anything. But Green Bay, I think they're better than anybody in the East. So when you look at it, I think this matchup is just going to be kind of a free-for-all. It's going to be an even matchup, whose running game is going to beat the other mediocre defense. So I feel like you're just looking at the Ravens defense. Usually they're solid. I think they're kind of hit and miss this year a little bit. So we'll see what happens in that one. But I'd rather pick a different matchup to watch personally too, because this one's just going to be kind of a wash for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of one of those teams where neither offense is really that great. And I don't want to say either of those defenses are that great either. But one factor that I do see is Kirk Cousins has played great against mediocre to bad teams, 5 touchdowns and a pick against the Giants and Browns. And he's played awful against better teams. I don't want to say very good teams because I don't think the Cowboys are a very good team. But he played the Cowboys and the Steelers, thrown 3 picks and only a touchdown in those matchups. So this is another matchup where the pass defense is pretty good. The Ravens' pass defense is a good defense. Overall, I don't think they're one of the top defenses in the league, but with the Redskins' inability to run the ball, that isn't going to really be a threat to the Ravens. And so, I think with the Ravens' hot start and their ability to clamp down on the passing game, I think that's going to be a rough night for Kirk Cousins, and I think the Ravens are going to take this one. I don't think easily because the Ravens' offense isn't that impressive either. Flacco isn't the Super Bowl caliber, 30, 40-plus touchdown quarterback that, he's paid to be. But, like you said, the run game is – I'm not a firm believer in Terrence West. I think he could start for them, but I don't think that he's one of the top backs in the league and is going to, rush for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns and, be the fantasy savior of the day. I don't think that's in his repertoire. So I think it'll be a boring game, maybe like 27-21, something along those lines. And I think that Baltimore will come away with this one just based on their pass defense alone. But heading to a game that maybe will be much more high scoring, if you will. The Steelers and Jets are facing off. As you know, last week, the Steelers, Le'Veon Bell, made a huge comeback after his 3-game suspension. Who do you got winning this game?
I'd have to go with the Steelers for sure, especially when you got Fitzpatrick out there throwing trash all game. And that one, the Steelers, we talked about it before, and we were like, hey, who's going to show up for the Steelers against Kansas City? Was it going to be the Steelers defense that we all know, or was it going to be the Steelers defense that we've seen sometimes this year that was inconsistent? And I think with Le'Veon Bell back, it just gives their defense more time to kind of settle down and get back in their groove when Le'Veon Bell's running all over people. Not that Williams was a bad running back whatsoever. He was doing pretty good without Le'Veon Bell, but there's nobody really like Le'Veon Bell that can kind of set your defense up. And we saw that defense just rip apart Kansas City. And when you have a defense like that has Kansas City running for their lives now that they're on all cylinders, and you have Fitzpatrick out there throwing 4, 5, 6 picks a game, there's not really much that the Jets are going to be able to do with the Steelers, if you ask me at least. I don't know if you have a different outlook on this or not, but for me, it's not looking good for the Jets, and I think the Steelers just come out and blow them out of the water. And if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be wearing their Bumblebee uniforms that I hate, but maybe this is kind of a classic trend for them. Come out in those Bumblebee jerseys and just whoop on people. What do you think?
Man, I'm going to have to agree with you once again. Fitzpatrick he didn't look too bad against the Seahawks last week. He kept trying Richard Sherman for some odd reason, threw 2 picks to him, but him and Brandon Marshall had a nice connection going. It was an exciting battle to watch. Baby T.O. and Sherman go at it. I think Marshall got the better of Sherman a couple of times, but in the end, Sherman is the best cornerback in the league for a reason. And Fitzpatrick, statistically, the worst quarterback in the league. 4 touchdowns, 10 picks is not going to get it done. I think not having Eric Decker out there really hurt them. Not just last week, but he's not going to be here for an extended period of time, potentially the whole season. And they just need more options. They don't have any passing options. And Matt Forte, who's aging, obviously one of the greats of this generation, just is not going to be able to get it done for this Jets offense, especially not for the high-powered Steelers offense. With Le'Veon Bell back, arguably the best running back in the league, with I don't think arguably the best wide receiver in the league also. I don't know how you game plan for that, especially with, your offense isn't really moving the ball, and, then you got to punt to potentially the most potent offense in the entire NFL. So I think that the Steelers, like you said, will handle them easily. And maybe a game that you're more interested in, the 3-0 Philadelphia Eagles taking on your second favorite team, I believe, the Detroit Lions. Now, I know the Lions have struggled recently. Do you think that they have a chance against the top scoring defense, the defense that's allowed less points per game than the Seattle Seahawks?
Man, the Lions, I don't know how else to explain it. They need help, and they have needed help for the last 60 years. So I don't really know where to start with them. You know, they played the Bears last week, and I was convinced that they were going to beat the Bears, and their offense comes out and looks like absolute trash. So when it comes to the Lions, they dropped bombs on the Colts when they played them. And then even against Green Bay, their offense was pretty good. They were moving the ball, they were scoring, and their defense gives up close to 40. So I just think there's no balance with the Lions. They never figure it out until midseason. So, you know, the Lions are kind of what you'd expect. They're going to start out 1-6, something like that, and then start playing good football, ruin their draft pick. That's what they always do. So when you look at the Eagles and the Lions, I mean, there was that epic snow game a couple years ago where the kick return team and all the special teams were running wild on them. Detroit had 2 kick return touchdowns because nobody could get their footing in the snow. And I don't think they're going to get bailed out by the snow. Even though they lost that game, they put up a ton of points. And it's just kind of a free-for-all out there that time. And this time, if the Eagles play anything like they've been playing, like I said before, I'm not really sold on the Eagles. But is there anything to be sold on with the Lions? I don't think so, especially when they can't beat Tennessee. They go out there, they can't beat the Bears, who are another one. What are you going to do? If you can't beat the Bears, you can't beat the Titans. But I did see a stat out there last night. It said the Lions are, I believe, one of 3 teams to lose all 3 of their games by 1 possession. So, I mean, they're at least close. They just don't have that balance yet. So, I don't know. Maybe they can keep that streak going of losing by 1 possession today and get within a touchdown at the end of the game and end up losing again. But I would not pick the Lions personally, even as a big Lions fan. Half my closet is Lions jerseys, and it pains me to say that I can't even pick them to beat the Eagles. I can't even pick them to beat the Bears because I did last week and I was wrong. I picked them to beat the Titans. They showed me up again. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to go with the Eagles. Sorry, Lions. But Darius, if you're going to wear those red suits, better step up to the plate when it comes to playing some defense. And it's not just him. I think he's looked good on defense, but everybody else on the Lions team, I don't even know where to start. They just look terrible.
I see where you're coming from. Carson Wentz has had a hot start to his rookie campaign. 5 touchdowns, no picks. He's been able to keep the ball out of harm's way. The defense has done a great job of locking teams down, only giving up, I believe, 9 points per game. Better than the Seahawks, the first team ever in the last 5 years. Although the season's not over, obviously. But I will say that the Eagles don't have a very impressive resume. They have beaten the Steelers, which I will give them. They steal it on what happened. They were able to lock down Antonio Brown, and the team just didn't look good. And the other 2 wins, though, were the Bears, which I know that they beat the Lions, and then the Browns, which, I'm pretty sure everyone is going to beat the Browns this year. So I'll say that although they've only given up 9 points, they haven't played that impressive of teams. And not that the Lions are that impressive of a team, obviously, but I think that, Wentz is coming off a bye week, may have cooled down a little bit. Teams may have figured him out now that, he's just a young guy. And the Lions, hopefully, I think that they can get it done. I think that, that receiving core is bound to do something because the running game is non-existent at this point. Theo Riddick, I don't think, is the worst back in the NFL, but he's also not in the top 10, I don't think. And, it's obviously a passing team, and Golden Tate needs to step up. Anquan Bolden, they need those guys to help out Marvin Jones, who's a man doing it all by himself right now. And I think Stafford can turn it around. He's a good quarterback. I think he's thrown for 5,000 one time in his career, maybe twice. And, I think, they can figure it out on offense. Although they lost Calvin, very sad about that. I think, this is one of their turnaround games where they can beat a team that's, overly hyped, if you will. And I think that I'm going to disagree with you, and I think the Lions are going to just surprise you today.
That is surprising. I'm surprised anybody can pick them with confidence. So one of us is going to be wrong now. Hopefully it's me. As a Lions fan, I really hope it's me, but I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you, and it's a good thing you don't have money on this game.
Well, you're talking about the Titans, and the Titans are playing today. They're facing off against the Miami Dolphins. Two teams are 1-3, looking for their second win. Who do you got going in this game?
This one is just a matchup of two terrible teams. And the Dolphins, like we said before, we thought they were going to be good after watching them play against the Hawks. And their defense outside of Ndamukong Suh has just been non-existent. And you'd think with all those high-paid players, even on defense, on offense, they got Arian Foster, who we didn't really expect him to last the whole season. He's already injured, and he's out for today as well. And it's just one of those things. The Dolphins paid all these guys all this money, and you expect them to come out and compete, and they just have not lived up to expectations. And when you watch their games, it's just not good at all. And, Maxwell's all right. You're throwing him out there, and you're like, okay, he can kind of do semi-well. But if you're going to pay somebody that much money, and you're going to pay Ndamukong Suh that much money, and they have Williams coming off the line, you can't be a 1-3 team with that much on your payroll and that many guys sitting on the bench and trying to tear it up. And Landry, he's kind of hit or miss. He's more of like a Jermaine Kearse, better than Jermaine Kearse, but in the sense that he comes out and he'll have a breakaway game, and then next game he'll have 10 yards. So he's just not there yet. And when you look at the Titans, they're equally as terrible. And there's nothing really to break down about this matchup outside of two 1-3 teams going at it. Mariota is really the only thing that I can see on the Titans that's semi-decent. And they're just sure they beat the Lions. That's not really a big surprise. But outside of that, I don't even know what to say about this matchup. It's just two teams that are not living up to expectations. Not that the Titans ever had those expectations, because they have been awful the last few years, and now the Dolphins are living up to their name like the Marino years. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he can't get it done. Not that Tannehill's good, but I don't even know where to begin with this matchup. So I'm just going to toss it back to you, because this is just one of those matchups that I can't even talk about because it's just so bad.
Well, I'll sort of agree with you. I think, you were talking about two teams that have definitely underperformed this year. The Dolphins, some thought would come out of the AFC and be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Especially with that defense, the amount of money that they paid for that defensive line is absolutely ridiculous to be 1-3 right now. But, it is only the beginning of the season. They are only 1-3. I think this is one of those that really get going. Like you said, the Titans are an awful team. Really all they have is Mariota and DeMarco Murray. And DeMarco Murray is putting up numbers like he's Marshall Faulk or something. So I think that the defensive line will try to key in on DeMarco and be able to shut down those receivers, whoever they are, for the Titans, a bunch of no names in the grand scheme of things. And I think Jarvis Landry is a great receiver, but you're right. Tannehill is not a very good quarterback, and one touchdown in 4 games aren't very good numbers. It's a blaring reason why your team is 1-3. Your best receiver has 1 touchdown through the first quarter of the season. So I think if they can, Landry will get more involved today. He'll get going, really spark this offense, and then the defensive line will get going and spark the defense. And I think the Dolphins will be one of those surprise, maybe wild card teams, although they're not looking like it right now. But some other teams are looking very unimpressive right now. I believe the Colts and Bears are playing this afternoon. Andrew Luck has not looked very good. Is the 3-headed monster with Russell, Luck, and RG3 that came into the league at the same time. Do you think that it's time to give up on Luck, or what do you think of this matchup?
I don't think it's time to give up on Luck by any means. I think he's still a good quarterback, and he's proved that throughout the last couple seasons. And he comes out and he puts up big numbers. And against the Lions, I believe he dropped close to 40 points, a think it was 35, and the Lions come back and get that safety at the end where they throw the ball out the back of the end zone on a kick return, which I don't understand how is even possible. But it's not just Andrew Luck. I feel like that team in general, the defense hasn't looked very good either. And if you're going to go out there and keep the offense on the field the entire game, then they're not really going to – or the defense on the field the entire game, they're not going to really look good on offense. So it's just one of those things. I don't think it's specifically Andrew Luck, and although he hasn't looked very impressive, the rest of the team hasn't either. So I think it's just one of those things. Andrew Luck's one of those guys that need to get kind of his rhythm down. I feel like he just doesn't have that rhythm yet. So I think as the season goes on, he's going to find his groove a little bit more, and he's going to kind of follow Lions, if you will. And he's going to go through the year, start screwing up the draft pick after it's already all said and done. Then he's going to start to figure it out, start putting up big numbers. And I wouldn't give up on him yet, but I don't see the Colts really making the playoffs or really doing much. And then on the other side, you have the Bears, the Bears. I don't really know what to say about the Bears. They don't have Matt Forte anymore. They don't have Brandon Marshall, which they have Alshon Jeffrey, but he's out there doing the best he can with no quarterback to throw to him. So the Bears are just one of those teams that they're just kind of floating out there. And, of course, they beat the Lions, like we talked about earlier. After we picked the Lions to just run all over the Bears come out and beat them. So shout out to the Bears for actually winning a game. It's impressive, but not really because it was only the Lions. But when it comes to the Bears and the Colts, I would take the Colts over the Bears all day. They have Andrew Luck who can get out and run, and the Bears just are the Bears this year. They just don't have many guys that can do stuff outside of Alshon Jeffrey and Langford, I believe, maybe out again today. He hasn't really lived up to the expectation when he's healthy, and they're onto their second, third string running backs, and it's just not looking good for the Bears.
Yeah, I agree. It's not looking good for the Bears, but also not looking good for the Colts either. The Colts defense is one of the worst in the league. And the sad thing about it all is Luck is having a decent year, 8 touchdowns, 3 picks, but his team's 1-3. And, if he keeps that pace, he's going to put up great numbers, but I don't think that he can keep that pace up. I think that teams are going to figure out how to slow a team can stop a particular player, but slow him down from those numbers, maybe raise his interceptions and turnovers, which are usually fairly high anyways. And, the team's going to struggle. I think they'll be in line for one of the top picks. And I think, on the flip side, the Bears aren't that impressive either. Hoyer, I believe Hoyer's starting for them at quarterback, unfortunately. Cutler wasn't able to get it done in however many years. They keep giving him chances every single year. He's still awful. But you're right, Langford isn't a very good running back. And I believe they lost Kevin White for the season, broke his fibula, left fibula, same injury that he had last season. And Alshon, he's just a one-man band trying to do it all himself. So, like you said, it's not looking very good for the Bears. But I think their main weakness is their run defense, and I don't think that anybody on the Colts, no disrespect to Frank Gore, obviously a legend in the game, but he just doesn't have it anymore. This is not the 49ers Frank Gore. It's an aging Frank Gore that's a shell of himself. So I don't think that he's going to put up 140 like Ezekiel Elliott did on this defense, or the 100+ that Lamar Miller did. And I think that the Bears will be able to withstand a strong Colts offense. I think Luck will have a decent game, but I think that, the Bears will be able to outlast them and to pull this one out. But, heading into the marquee matchup, if you will, some might, based on record alone, I don't think it's going to be as close as some people think. But we have the Houston Texans taking on the Minnesota Vikings, 3-1 Texans, facing the undefeated Sam Bradford-led Minnesota Vikings. So who do you got in this game?
I'm honestly surprised that the Vikings have looked this good, and I think it's their defense that's really holding the glue together there. The glue that's actually holding the team together there. And I was not a fan of that Sam Bradford trade at all, and a lot of people said it would have made him better. And at this point, I don't really know if they would be 4-0 with Teddy Bridgewater, and I never thought that Sam Bradford would be a better pick than Teddy Bridgewater, and I don't think that he really is. I think with Bridgewater, potentially they're still 4-0. I think the defense has scored maybe as amount of touchdowns as their offense has. And you look at the stat sheet every time, and it's like, okay, where did all these touchdowns come from? And you're like, oh, there's the defense. Yet again, you watch the highlights, and the defense is just running back with touchdowns, recovering fumbles, and setting up the offense. So I really think it's the Vikings defense that's keeping him in it. Stephon Diggs looking pretty good as a rookie in Minnesota. But Bradford, I don't really know if he's the reason. I mean, he has looked better than I thought he would because I was never really a Bradford fan. I don't know how your boy Johnny Hecker feels about him because I know that they were probably in the same location at the same time. But really, when you look at it, it's just kind of shocking that the Vikings are 4-0. And I didn't think their defense was this good, but I guess they are. And they're going to be kind of a force to be reckoned with. And then, the 3-1 Texans just kind of sounds weird because the Texans I didn't think were going to be that good either. And they come out and I believe they got blown out 28-0 on, was it a Sunday or Monday night game? One of those two, maybe a Thursday night. It was one of the primetime matchups. And ever since then, they've just kind of been winning somehow, which I am not sold on the Texans either by any means. And I would have to go with the Vikings for this one, even though these are two teams that I'm shocked are 3-1 and 4-0, because going into the season, I would have said Texans might be like 2-2 at this point, and same with the Vikings. Now they're 4-0 and 3-1. So I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it up, but if the Vikings defense keeps playing this way, then I don't think anybody's going to be able to stop them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would definitely wouldn't have guessed these two teams are two of the top in their divisions, but I do like the Vikings in this one. I think the Texans without J.J. Watt are just going to be a mediocre team at best. They're going to be relying on Brock Osweiler, who I always thought was trash when he was playing for the Broncos. Never thought he was good, and he's proven to be not that good as a starter. 5 touchdowns, 6 picks. Probably expect those numbers to continue to increase, especially the interceptions. I just don't think that he's a very good quarterback, especially with DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers in the league. He's not able to get him to the ball as much as Will Fuller. Not a knock on Will Fuller, but DeAndre Hopkins, like I said, one of the best receivers, I think top 5 in the league. And Brock Osweiler is not able to get him the ball. So especially when you have a run game such as they do, Lamar Miller having a great year to start, and the offense, like I said, is all on Osweiler's shoulders. He's just not able to get it done. And the Vikings defense is, like you said, their strong point. Bradford hasn't been impressive, but hasn't turned the ball over. Some of the same with Carson Wentz. That's the reason that their teams have been so successful is their quarterbacks don't turn the ball. I think Bradford, who's known to, we know that what we're going to get from Bradford. There's no surprises. He turns the ball over a decent amount, and I don't think that he's going to have no turnovers this whole year. So maybe he'll have 1 or 2 this game, but I think the Vikings defense will carry them this game as they do every game. I know J.J. Watt is tremendously huge. I think Jadeveon Clowney, this is his year to step up. I don't think that he's shown us that he deserved to be the number 1 pick since he got into the league. Has been overshadowed tremendously by J.J. Watt, and without Watt in the picture, it's going to be on Jadeveon to step up. And I just don't think that he's that caliber of player. Although, not to say that he's awful. I don't think anybody's a caliber of defensive end such as J.J. Watt. Obviously, one of the best of all time. But they'll definitely suffer without him. Moving into the afternoon games, though, another 4-0, 3-1 matchup. We have the Atlanta Falcons taking on the reigning champion 4-0 Von Miller, strip sack Miller, Denver Broncos. Who you got in this game?
I'm going to take the Falcons with this one. You got Paxton Lynch coming out, making his first career start, and I just don't think you can really put it on the shoulders of a rookie at this point. And I know they have before, and they kind of let them go through training camp and get ready and kind of just get set for starting. And this time he's had, about a week to prepare for it. And I don't think that you can really throw it to a rookie in a week and say, hey, we're going up against one of the best teams in the league and the Falcons, and you're going to carry us today. And I'm just not sold on the Broncos with Paxton Lynch, and maybe he can prove me wrong and say, I was drafted for a reason and the Broncos saw something in me. But with Simeon going out, I wasn't really sold on Simeon at first either, but he seemed like he found a groove and he was able to get it going. And I just think Paxton Lynch being thrown out there his first time against the Falcons, I don't think it's going to end well for him. And Matt Ryan's out there throwing bombs to Julio Jones all game. So I think with the Falcons' weapons out there with Matt Ryan, I think although the Broncos' defense is pretty good, and you got, like you said, Strip Sack Miller out there doing his thing, I think the Falcons are just going to tear them apart if Paxton Lynch can't come out and keep the ball moving, because you keep Denver's D on the field longer than they have been, and I think it's just going to be a recipe for disaster for the Broncos. But if Paxton Lynch can go out there and show me that he's a better quarterback than I think he is, and he can step up under the pressure, then sure, I'll take the Broncos. But right now I'm picking the Falcons because Paxton Lynch, first career start, hasn't had a whole lot of time to get ready. I'm taking the Falcons all day.
Yeah, I think Paxton Lynch, he definitely has a favorable matchup for his first career start. You know, the Atlanta defense, one of the worst passing defenses in the league as a team, over 30 points per game to opponents. And the Broncos are playing at home. So, you want to get your rookie quarterback, your first round pick, a guy some time in there against, a defense that he can feel comfortable in, to get an early rhythm going. And I think that, the Broncos defense, obviously one of the best in the league, was one of the best in the league last year as well, will have to carry them this season no matter who's under center, whether it's Simeon or Paxton Lynch. It's going to all depend on that defense more than just strip sack Miller. Talib is going to be a big playmaker. Chris Harris is going to be a playmaker back there in the secondary. They have a great defense top to bottom. And I think that, you're right. The Falcons do have a good chance. I don't think that Julio will come close to 300 yards this week. And I also don't think that Matt Ryan will touch 500 again. Career nights or last week against the Panthers for them. But I think I might have to agree with you. Although all signs point to the Broncos being able to contain the Falcons, they're playing at home. They're one of the best defenses. Their fans will be excited for their new quarterback starting. I think that, with all signs and everything pointing to the Broncos being able to handle the season, I think the Falcons are going to surprise some people and take this one away from them.
And moving on to the Cowboys and the Bengals, what do you see in this matchup? Is it going to be anywhere close to the Cowboys for real, or is it going to be the Andy Dalton show just tearing up the Broncos? That kind of sounds funny to say because I'm not really sold on Andy Dalton being an elite quarterback, but what do you see in this matchup?
I like that Drake Kirkpatrick is back for the Bengals. They needed him back. Their defense it's all right. I don't think that it's one of the top defenses in the league. I don't think that's one of the worst defenses. It's one of those middle-of-the-road defenses that can play great one week and, give up 30 the next week and, nobody bats an eye at it. But I think that, you're right. Andy Dalton, I don't believe, is an elite signal caller. A.J. Green, I think, is, number one, if not number two, or three, top three receivers in the league next to Odell and Antonio Brown. And, when you have a guy like that, you're a Lions fan, you can put anybody under center and throw it up to the guy. Calvin was one of those guys who, he had Dan Orlovsky throwing him the rock. And so, A.J. Green's that same type of player, and it makes Andy Dalton's job easy. The run game, Jeremy Hill is, he's one of the backs, same as Isaiah Crowell out in Cleveland. They're just not those guys that are, when you see them at the top of the league or something in fantasy, you're like, oh, really? Wow, that's interesting. That guy got lucky. but I don't think that, he's going to be a threat. On the flip side, the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, I think is a lot better than some people believe. Ezekiel Elliott's having a great rookie season, on pace for a crazy amount of yardage. I think 1,800 plus at this point. And it doesn't look like he's slowing down. He's been healthy. But, not having Dez is obviously going to take a toll on the Cowboys. Cole Beasley is their number one guy. And I just don't think that they got it. Their defense hasn't been very good for a long time now. And the Cowboys are just a name brand at this point. I think that the Bengals, although also very unimpressive, I think that they can handle the Cowboys in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Dak Prescott, he looked good in the preseason. I thought he was going to be a pretty good fill-in for the Cowboys, and he looks like he has been serviceable so far. And I know Jerry Jones is really eager to get Tony Romo back out on the field, but he's always trying to get Romo out on the field when he's going out there with a punctured lung and a concussion and everything else. I feel like Jerry Jones is always trying to force him back out on the field. And I think at this point, it's either better to hang on to Romo and see if you can trade him for something, or just tell him, your time in Dallas is up. Because I think Dak Prescott, if you give him that leeway and say, hey, this is going to be your team from now on, I think he's going to be better off that way rather than starting and then having to go back to backing up Tony Romo. Because Romo's made of glass, so he's going to be breaking all season. And if you're forcing him out on the field way quicker than he's supposed to be, like it usually is, there's no way that Tony Romo is really going to last long in Dallas anyway. So I think if I'm the owner of the Cowboys, if I'm Jerry Jones, I'm saying Romo's done. And I think Dak Prescott is my quarterback of the future right now. But as far as the Bengals, like you said, are just one of those teams people, I don't know if you can say this, but forgot about Dre. And now that he's back, maybe there's something to look forward to over in Cincinnati. And I just think it's going to be kind of one of those rough matchups. If Ezekiel Elliott can run up on the Bengals defense, I take the Cowboys all day. And if Prescott can, I'm not really sold on Beasley at all. And I think it's funny that he's a number one receiver right now because he just looks like a small guy out there running, his legs going 90 miles an hour because they're so close to the ground. But, when you put him up against the Bengals, I think the Bengals defense is actually decent. And you have Pac-Man Jones out there, in quotes, the felon. Probably about 6 or 7 felonies, but he's back out on the field. And I believe you said this before, but you said, how good does Pac-Man Jones have to be that he's still in the league after he's gotten arrested like 7, 8 times? And it's crazy that he's even still on the field, but he actually still looks pretty decent. And I think, personally, I'm going to go with the Cowboys in this one, even though the Bengals, I think, are pretty good. I just don't see Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott really being like the marquee matchup of the day or anything like that. And I think the Cowboys can come out and surprise some people. And I think if Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott can work together, they beat the Bengals. But, man, Pac-Man Jones, that's a different story. But, I'd have to take the Cowboys over the Bengals if I'm going to pick somebody today.
Well, I see. I'll have to disagree with you, but, we'll head on to the next game. We have the Buffalo Bills, who just recently shut out the New England Patriots, traveling to California to the Coliseum to take on the NFC West leading Los Angeles Rams. Who do you got in this game?
This one's kind of interesting because it's the Bills and the Rams, and both teams are kind of a shocker because it's the Rams are 3-1, which who knew that moving to LA was going to make them 3-1 outside of St. Louis? I don't know if St. Louis's fan base was that bad and they just couldn't really get a home field advantage or anything like that. But Seahawks go in there, play one of the worst games of their lives, and end up losing 9-6, which is, in my opinion, I believe you were at that game, one of the most boring games I've ever watched on TV. I don't know if it was different in the stadium or not, but
it was awful. It was just watching a field possession game or a field position game. Punt here, punt here, punt here.
Yeah.
Although Johnny was great. Don't get me wrong. Johnny, I mean, as a Seahawks fan, he was pissing me off. But, he kick it to like the 5-yard line every time. It's like, man, just kick it to the end zone one time.
Yeah, for real. But, yeah, I think if you look at the matchup, LA has looked pretty good. And although they didn't look good their first game of the season, they have rebounded since. And I think they're a different team. And as far as the Bills go, if they're going to limit New England to 0 points, obviously they didn't have Tom Brady, then Case Keenum, are they going to be able to limit him to 0 points? I think it's a pretty good chance because you limit a second and third string quarterback to 0 points, and now they're playing pretty much a second and third string quarterback in Case Keenum. So I think if they can shut down the Patriots offense, which obviously had a third string quarterback starting for them, they can easily hold the Rams to 7-10 points like the Seahawks did. And I don't think that the Rams offenses look real good at all, and really any game. And I think it's really been their defense that's held them in games, and they brought the pressure against Russell. And I think in this game, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't know if you can really agree with me or not, but I'm going to pick the Bills in this one, because if there's no offense for the Rams, like there really hasn't been this whole season with Keenum starting, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bills. And I say the Bills end up winning the game like 13-10 or something crazy.
That's a very interesting analysis over there. But yeah, like you said, Case Keenum has not been good, and his inability to stretch the field is really taking a toll on Todd Gurley, the reigning offensive rookie of the year. He's up to 2.6 yards per carry. He's not having a great year at all. I would know he's on my fantasy team, my number one pick, but that offense hasn't looked great at all. You know, Tavon Austin got a big check, big extension this offseason, and you know, he hasn't shown up really, and it's not even a tribute to their defense. Their defense hasn't played that great either. So I can only come to one conclusion. It's got to be Johnny Hekker, their punter. Their field position has just been tremendous. And, you know, really, statistically, their offense doesn't really move the ball. One of the worst passing and rushing teams in the game. They don't score a whole lot of points, although I think they put up 37 on the Buccaneers. But outside of that, you know, only put up 9 on the Seahawks and have really played a field position game with all the teams that they've played. And, you know, the defense hasn't been overly tremendous either. They've, you know, been able to stop people in opportune portions of the field, you know, to cause punts and things like that, but they don't get a ton of takeaways. They don't get a ton of sacks. Aaron Donald hasn't been, you know, getting to the quarterback all day, every day. Same with Robert Quinn. You know, although they do have a very good defensive line, they've, you know, like I said, shut people down on third down, forced punts, but, you know, not as many turnovers, not as many sacks, and have just played good team ball to this point in the year. And, you know, that's eventually going to come to an end. Some teams are going to figure out Case Keenum, although there's not much to figure out, and force their hand and play golf. You know, Gurley at 2.6 yards per carry is not going to get it done against some of the top teams in the league. Although it worked against the Seahawks in LA, you know, I don't want to make any excuses. They beat the Seahawks fair and square, but you know, if you look at it, Russell's hobbled. Their run game is still atrocious. But you know, hats off to the Rams. They got it done then, but I don't think that they can get that same done against you know, the Steelers, the Broncos, some of those other top teams in the league. Although, you know, they've just been able to shut down the Seahawks for whatever reason. But, you know, on the other side of the ball, the Bills, LaShawn McCoy is having a good year, which is weird to say. Finally, I guess. You know, he had great years every single year that he was with the Eagles, came over to the Bills and has just struggled to get it going. You know, I guess people just too much expectations for LaShawn. He's, you know, up around 1,800 all-purpose yards and, you know, close to 20 touchdowns every year. And, you know, when he's not touching that as a Bill, it's kind of hard to see, you know, him as still one of the top running backs in the league. But, you know, he's having a good year to start. Tyrod is serviceable. I don't think that he's one of the top in the league, but he's not going to hurt your team as, you know, some other players will. I think that he can get it done. Obviously, not having Sammy Watkins is a big blow to any team. Robert Woods, I don't think he's barely a number 2, so I don't know how he can possibly be your number 1. And I believe Charles Clay is their tight end there. Not a whole ton of weapons to help out LaShawn. You know, is another reason that he's not really putting up those huge stats there in Buffalo. But I think that you're right. I think that, you know, the Rams are eventually going to get figured out, and teams are going to be able to score points on that defense that isn't overly impressive. And I think this is one of the weeks that it's going to happen. The Bills, you know, not the strongest offense, not the strongest defense, but, you know, like you said earlier, one of those defenses that everyone is always excited about. You know, a couple of years ago, we're up there with, you know, I think they were the number 2 defense to the Seattle Seahawks of, you know, points allowed and yards allowed. And, you know, Rex Ryan, obviously, I think no matter what people say, is a very good coach. And I think that he can figure out Jeff Fisher, who's, you know, perennially usually, you know, around 8-8, not too great. And I think, you know, the Rams may come back to reality this week and take an L at home. So I'm going to agree with you and say that the Bills are able to handle the Rams. And staying here in California, we have an AFC West matchup of the San Diego Chargers and the 3-1 Oakland Raiders. Who do you think is going to take this one?
Man, this one, another one is one of those games that I'm just not real excited to watch. And even though the Raiders are 3-1, it doesn't really seem like it. When you talk about the Raiders, you don't think 3-1. And the Chargers are still the Chargers. And I don't think anybody ever gets excited about the Chargers, and they're just not a team that you can look at and just really get excited about. And I think the Raiders, if it wasn't for that going for 2 and having that gutsy call early in the season, they'd be 2-2 right now. And I think the Raiders are a surprise being 3-1. They are a good team, but the Chargers are just, man, this is just like kind of a wash for me, because it's the Raiders. You do have Bruce Irvin, and you do have some new guys on defense for them that have kind of strengthened their team. But overall, I mean, got my boy on the bench, Connor Cook, which I'm not saying that you should put him into play, because obviously it's working having him on the bench. And he looked weird in a Raiders uniform in the preseason. And the Chargers, Phillip Rivers is not really an elite quarterback. I don't think you can even touch elite at all, elite status with his name. And I think Antonio Gates is too old. He's not really going to do much as a tight end. And I just think this matchup is not really one that I can really pick a winner, because they're both just not teams that I'm sold on at all. And I think the Chargers are so inconsistent that they can come out and put up points one week and then one week just look terrible. Like that one year against the Seahawks, they proved that, and they came out and put up some points and ended up winning that game. And against the Lions, they were down, I believe, 21-0 at one point a couple of years ago and ended up coming back to win. But they're just not exciting to watch at all. So, I mean, if I'm going to pick somebody, sure, I'll pick the Raiders. But it's not really something I'm going to be real confident in picking either side of the coin.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. This is one of those you just throw the dart at the dartboard, and whatever it lands on that's who you're going with. And, like you said, no matter what their records are, both these teams aren't very impressive. In my eyes, Derek Carr, I believe, has been a very good quarterback, reviving Michael Crabtree's mediocre career. I'm just kidding. No, I've always liked Crabtree. I loved him when he was at Texas Tech. And, I always thought he was going to be a good receiver, although, unfortunately, he got drafted to the Rivals, so I was very sad about. And, I'm glad he's reviving his career in California for the Raiders, alongside another great receiver, Amari Cooper, another young guy who's going to, take this league by storm in no time at all. They're both having really good careers with Carr. Their run game has been a three-headed monster, although I don't think any of them have been overly impressive. I think Latavius has been the best one, if you will. But, like I said, that offense is Derek Carr and those two receivers. And the defense has been horrific, although I will shout out former Seahawk Bruce Irvin, the number one leader in the NFL in forced fumbles, also obviously playing for one of the worst defenses in the league. But, shout out to Bruce for doing it big, getting paid and going out there to Oakland. Unfortunately, he won't be here to win the Super Bowl this year, but, at least he's doing big things for himself out in Oakland. So big shout out to Bruce. But, on the other side of the ball, the Chargers have been getting lucky, if you will. I mean, the 1-3 is not very lucky, but, even the touchdowns that they do score, Melvin Gordon has been everything that people thought he would be last year, this year. 6 touchdowns on the year, although the yardage really isn't there yet. I think that he's one of those guys that, isn't getting as much love as, Gurley and some of the other guys. And, he's getting to the end zone, which is, that's what's important, scoring points, and he's doing it. And so, I believe Phillip Rivers isn't one of the best, but, on the other side as well, his receivers aren't that good. He's really missing Keenan Allen, or really will miss Keenan Allen the rest of this season. No disrespect to Travis Benjamin, who's also good receiver. I don't want to say great, and people throw around the word great too loosely these days. But, like you said, I think it's talking about greats. Antonio Gates hasn't been great at all this year. When he has played, he's had some mediocre at best production and has spent the last couple weeks inactive. I believe he's playing today, but, like I said, there's not much to expect from Gates until he proves otherwise. And Travis Benjamin is really all they got going for the passing game. Outside of Gordon. Gordon's done it all in the passing game as well as the rush. And, just for the sake of debate, I'm going to have to go with the opposing squad. And I think that they'll pull out one against this mediocre Raiders defense. But heading to the supposed primetime game tonight, we have the very weird, awkwardly unimpressive Green Bay Packers offense facing off against the very weird, awkward, unimpressive New York Giants offense. Who do you got in this game?
Well, it really all depends. Is it going to be is there a field goal net that's going to be involved in the defense? Because if so, I think the Green Bay Packers are going to be able to lock down Odell. If the field goal net does make an appearance on the field, he's going to run right into it. It's going to fall on top of him. And I think it's going to be a clean play by the kicking net. But no, in reality, I think Green Bay is just kind of one of those teams that are off to a slow start. You know what Aaron Rodgers can do. He has his weapons back. He didn't have any weapons last season, and he was able to make them look good even. And Eddie Lacy lost a lot of weight in the offseason, and now he's back trying to do his thing. And I think the Packers are just really a game away from just busting out, and they flash some greatness against the Lions like everybody does. And they put up a ton of points against the Lions, and I think their defense, if their defense steps up, it's Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers with all of his receivers, and he's got the Rodgers to Rodgers connection. There's nothing that you can really do to stop that. And camera turned off for some reason, but I'll keep going. So you got the Rodgers to Rodgers connection. You got Eddie Lacy dropping some weight. And the Giants, I just don't think are really that good outside of Odell. And Eli Manning's just one of those quarterbacks that are hit or miss. And personally, I'm going to take the Packers because the Giants are a good team. I just, like I said before, not really sold on that entire division. And the Packers, I feel like, are just a week away from just going off.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand where you're coming from. The Pack very unimpressive. He's been very effective. Only completing 58% of his passes, but for 9 touchdowns and only 1 pick. I was very surprised that he hasn't been and not throwing for a lot of yards. I think he's 22nd in the league in passing yards, which is surprising from a former MVP. I'm not a big Rodgers fan, but just knowing the top guys in the league, seeing Rodgers down there, although very effective, like I said, is just weird to me. And, their defense, the Packers' defense hasn't been very good as of recently. And I think that the Giants are a good team as well. I don't think that they get as much credit as their 2-2 record shows. They definitely have a chance, had a chance to be 4-0 at this point. I'll say their defense hasn't been very impressive either. Their team as a whole has a -8 turnover margin, and largely due to Eli Manning. Same thing that a lot of people blamed his older brother, the legendary Peyton Manning, for. Eli is the same, throwing picks in clutch situations. Had a chance to beat the Redskins. Odell Beckham absolutely going off. When people are talking about this kicking post, the kicking net, Odell, go back to it. And Odell was going off in that fourth quarter, really handing Josh Norman the business. But, then here comes Eli throwing a pick in the end zone, I believe, and just completely ruining the game. 2 picks in the fourth quarter. And, Eli's just not getting it done. With 3 receivers like Victor Cruz, Odell Jr., and very, very good receivers, should be able to dominate any secondary in the league. And Eli's a prolific passer, comes from the Manning family. So, he's got to be a good quarterback. But turnovers just becoming too costly. And, I think that they can figure it out, and I hope they do. It's another primetime game, but it's all going to come down to if Eli can execute late in the game. And every game's come down to that. And the first game he was able to, the Giants had a strong start, but these last 2 weeks, Eli has really killed the team, and it's a huge reason that they are in the hole that they're in. And Odell is frustrated the way that he is. Another primetime game, Odell is going to wear his heart on his sleeve as he always does. I hope he never changes. And Eli's going to have to come through. And I think that if he does, and I know Odell will have a strong game and the rest of the receivers will have a strong game if Eli does. And I think that the Giants, who I think are one of the sleeper teams that are really going to take the NFC by storm if they're able to get it together, is they'll take this one on the Sunday Night Football tonight.
Ooh. All right. Well, I'll take Green Bay. You'll take New York. We'll see what happens.
We will. And our very final game, although I'm not that excited about it, the 1-3 matchup of what should be Cam Newton versus famous Jameis Crab Legs Winston is not going to happen, unfortunately. It's going to be Derek Anderson, I believe, versus Jameis Winston, as Cam, I don't think, passed his concussion protocols, unfortunately. I'd love to see Cam on Monday night, but with Derek Anderson versus Jameis Winston, who you got in this one?
I think it's just going to be a non-defensive battle for sure, because you look at the Buccaneers giving up almost 40 to the Rams. Maybe they did give up 40. I'm not sure what the exact score was in that game, but Buccaneers defense is absolutely terrible. And Derek Anderson actually looked serviceable once Cam Newton went out, but then you see Carolina's defense getting torched by Julio. So I really think it's really going to come down to the offense and who can put up more points. And I really think you're going to get something like a 35-32 game or something like that. And I don't see the Buccaneers pulling it out, although Derek Anderson is starting without Cam Newton. Derek Anderson looked decent. I think he had a pick late in the game, but he did bring him back, and Cam was struggling to keep up in that primetime game. And then all of a sudden, Derek Anderson comes in, they're right back in the game, and then he throws that pick to end it. But when it comes to Derek Anderson, he's a serviceable backup. He's had all week to prepare for it after he was thrown in the game already, and he looked decent. Against the Buccaneers defense, it's absolutely terrible. But then you have a Carolina defense who has not lived up to expectations whatsoever at all. So Jameis Winston, he's going to want to get out and flush the pocket if they send any sort of pressure and look to run all over him. But really, it's just going to be one of those matchups that are going to be, if you ask me, a non-defensive battle. It's going to be all on the offense, and the defenses just haven't stepped up. So I don't think you can really pinpoint a defensive battle on either side. So when it comes to it, I say Derek Anderson gets them. Personally, Carolina wins that game, but Fozzie Whitaker, not really sold on him either. He's just kind of a fill-in once Stewart went out, and I think it's going to be the Fozzie Whitaker and Derek Anderson show to try to show that they actually do belong in this league as starters against a mediocre team with the Buccaneers led by Crab Legs Winston, like you said before. So that's my analysis on it. I really am picking Carolina because I'm not really sold on either of their teams on defense, but I think Carolina's defense is going to be just a little bit better than the Bucs defense.
Yeah, I'll agree with you that the defense is going to be better with Kawan Short, Luke Kuechly, arguably one of the top linebackers in the league, and Thomas Davis. They'll be able to stop the run, but I don't think that the Buccaneers even have a running back. I don't know what they do back there. It's just Jameis Winston all day long. And unfortunately, Winston has 8 touchdowns, 8 picks on the year. And I think that they're just letting him go, letting him try things out. I would really love Mike Evans as a receiver. I think like the Larry Fitzgerald type, and just has a great career. Just nothing too flashy, but just gets the job done, puts points on the board, and is one of those that's a franchise receiver. Maybe get his jersey retired one day. But back to the point, I think it'll be a big day for Mike Evans. Julio put 300 up on this secondary last week. I don't think that he'll come close to those numbers, but 100 and a touchdown is what you'd expect from one of the top wide receivers in the league, top 10, I believe. And, Winston is going to have his fair share of turnovers. And I think that the Panthers defense will be able to withstand any run that the Buccaneers make. And, like you said, Derek Anderson played very well, a lot better than Cam's played last week. And to be honest, that Cam's played this whole season. Cam hasn't played, MVP caliber offense this year. And, has taken a couple big hits, took a couple big hits on that opening night against the Broncos. That were some questionable non-calls, and then took a big hit this last week that obviously kept him out for this game. Which I'm sad, like I said, to not see Cam, but very happy for his personal health. I feel like a lot of teams, a lot of players don't take these concussions as seriously as they are, and so I'm glad to see the team and the NFL looking out for Cam's health. And, like I said, a guy that's taken a couple big shots definitely has more than one concussion, and I believe that's why he's out this week. But, like you said, Fozzie Whitaker, again, no Michael Orr on the offensive line. Nobody protects his blind side. And no Jay Stu, Timberline product. Shout out Washington State. Also not playing in this game. So, like you said, Fozzie Whitaker, not overly impressive. Cameron Artis-Payne, a product out here in Santa Maria, California, from Allen Hancock College. For all you JC guys out there, he's also unfortunately hasn't been very impressive, I will say, this year. And so, look for one of those two to step up. But like I said, this is going to be one of those passing attack games. Two defenses that aren't very great with the pass. Panthers have the advantage with the run, but Buccaneers never run. So I think it'll be a shootout, and I think that the Panthers just have more to gain with the win than the Buccaneers do. They're one of those teams that it would be nice to win. It would be nice to make it to that next level, but they have much more to gain by getting a higher draft pick than Carolina does to prove that they need to be back in that Super Bowl caliber matchup. So I think that the Panthers will win this one just based off sheer will alone. And, I think it'll be a good game from the receivers, Kelvin Benjamin on the Panthers side and Mike Evans on the Buccaneers side. I think that about wraps it up for the matchups, the Week 5 matchups. I'm Corey Sullivan.
I'm Brian Duchaine.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yep.